Welcome to the Evo India podcast. Now, taking on from our earlier podcast where we talked about the Maruti 800 and its entire history and the relevance to India, we are taking forward our Gone But Not Forgotten series into our podcast studio. And with us, we have Adil Darukhanawala, the boss man of Indian automotive journalism. And nobody knows Indian automotive history as much as and as well as Adil does. So, Adil, thank you for joining us in the studio. Today, we're going to talk about Tata Motors, the history, how it started, how it progressed, and the future also. Maybe a few glimpses into where Tata Motors is going. Obviously, if you've been following the stock market, you will see Tata Motors share price has gone through the roof. Adil, you own any Tata Motors stocks? As a Parsi, you have to. Huh?
No, unfortunately, as a Parsi, I don't own any stocks. I prefer to play safe. Government bonds, pension schemes, HDFC stuff, etc. So that's about it.
So full disclosure, I own Tata Motors stocks, and that's because my mother, a Parsi, she bought Tata Motors stocks for me when I started working for Overdrive under Adil. Unfortunately, I never invested in Tata Motors, but luckily I didn't sell those stocks. So that has got like a nice kitty on the side, thanks to Mummy. So that's a full disclosure.
Mummies know best.
Mummies know best. So let's start with this whole history of Tata Motors. Now, everybody knows that Tata Motors started off with trucks, passenger cars came later, and they started off with Mercedes-Benz trucks. Adil, talk to us as to how that came to be.
Okay, much before Tata's got into trucks with Mercedes-Benz, I must go back about say 1948 or something. A tie-up was done for Mercedes-Benz trucks with Hindustan Motors. It's there in the my Mercedes-Benz book. You can get
the book is called Winning. It's got the history of Mercedes-Benz in India.
So it was Hindustan Motors and Mercedes-Benz who were to do a range of trucks. At that time, the industrial policy was still not defined very well. So we had this thing where there would be importing of vehicles done across the board, bikes, cars, commercial vehicles, whatever, even tractors. So Hindustan Motors already had a tie-up with the Nuffield organization to do the Morris cars. And they also had a tie-up with Studebaker Corporation of the USA to do the Studebaker trucks and cars. And they said that they'd do this. A lot of things were done, and the first trucks came to India, and they were not cleared. Remember, those were the days when communication was not like we have mobiles or phone. So a lot of things would go by the wire, the telegram and whatnot. So for 6-7 months, the Mercedes-Benz didn't hear anything from Hindustan Motors. So they deputed one guy to come to India, check out, and they found out that the trucks, these guys didn't clear the trucks, didn't pay the customs duty, and they're still on the Howrah docks. I think it didn't work out well for Mercedes-Benz, so they dropped out. Second portion was around about 1948 again or 49, J.R.D. Tata and Suman Mulgaonkar were in Switzerland, and they were trying to find out a lot of partners for a lot of engineering goods in India. And that's when they tied up with a German company by the name of Krauss Maffei to make steam locomotives in India. Around that time, and Krauss Maffei was wiped out of the Second World War, bombed out of. But the Tatas gave them hope and said, we'll take all your engineers, because they were out of a job, nothing was happening. So they got these guys, and Telco which had been set up just before the Second World War or during the Second World War to manufacture railway wagons and whatnot using the steel plates from Tata Steel there. So the Krauss Maffei guys came there, and the reputation of the Tatas even then was such that it suddenly elicited some attention to Ferry Porsche, who was Ferdinand Porsche's son. Ferry Porsche was trying to find out as many partners as possible to start making the Beetle and other cars for India, which they had done for the German army and whatnot. And he needed money to get his father out of, because he was imprisoned after World War II during the Nuremberg trials, any industrialist who had helped the German war machine. So he was trying to do that. And that's when JRD and Sumant Mulgaonkar met with Ferry Porsche. And immediately from there, they said, please come to Wolfsburg. They went to Wolfsburg, saw the Beetle, and they said, we'd like you to make the not just the Beetle, but because India is growing up, you could take any derivatives of the Beetle. They had got a lot of derivatives where, they, including four-wheel drive vehicles, etc. They said you could do that thing. That was very interesting for both GRD as well as Mulgaonkar, and they came to India. At that time, because they were stretched with their finances for the steel and the locomotive business and whatnot, they thought about one of the directors in Tata Sons was Mr. Khatau, who was also on the board of Premier Automobiles. So, and Premier had already a tie-up with Chrysler Corporation and also with Fiat to make the cars. And at that time, they said there was a lot of unused capacity at Premier. They said, can we rope in Premier to make the Volkswagen Beetle for Telco Volkswagen? And that could happen. So I think it was critical at that point for Premiers to have contributed 1/3 of the price, the project cost for that thing. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So we did not see Volkswagen till this century, in India. Everything happened. The chapter was closed. Both GRD and Ferry Porsche worked quite hard till 1951, and then they gave up. And in 1954, finally, the government said we will want to have road transport as a priority. And around that time, Mercedes-Benz also was grappling with rebuilding itself after the Second World War. So they had planned out that they would like to have two great partners in two different spheres of the globe. One in South America, which was also coming up, and one in Asia. So they picked the Tatas as the ones to get into truck manufacture, and one was with Brazil, and they set up a wholly owned subsidiary in Brazil, and in Asia they set up this joint venture with the Tatas. First truck started rolling out from Jamshedpur. There's an avenue known as Stuttgart Avenue there, where a lot of Germans resided, and it was a marriage made in heaven. And both parties really worked so well together.
How did it start? Was it CBU trucks? Was it assembled here?
No, I think first 100 trucks or something were complete CKDs. And because the Indian staffers needed to learn. So, and the Germans were very good in teaching across over there. And they were very matter of fact. And actually, having been humbled or been at the receiving end during World War II, they knew that it was only their efforts, their expertise, their professional acumen which would help them recover. So they were forthcoming and giving a lot of gyan to everyone without trying to talk down to people. And I think that is a very big hallmark of why this Tata Mercedes-Benz partnership succeeded. So the first trucks came in, and then there was a phased manufacturing thing which the government had done. They said in 10 years' time, you had to indigenize almost 60% of the parts. The Tatas did that in 6 years. Entire 100% they did it. And the trucks they became overnight success.
And for that time, they were state of the art.
They were. The L312 was the model which Mercedes-Benz, that was the first truck model, completely new platform which Mercedes-Benz introduced in 1950 in Germany. That was the first all-new truck from them. And there was a bigger L316, L3600 truck. So the L312, which came here, both as a truck chassis, as a full forward control bus chassis, everything across, became known as a 1210 after some time. So those were the things which happened, and they really did very good across over there.
So that's how the truck manufacturing started. Then why didn't the Tata Mercedes-Benz or the Telco Mercedes-Benz partnership progress through the years?
No, so the government, if you see, in 1969, the government said no more foreign collaborations.
Okay.
So if you see, Piaggio went out of Bajaj Auto, Fiat went out of Premier Automobiles, Mercedes-Benz Daimler-Benz had to exit out of Telco, but they kept their 10% shareholding even then. So they didn't have a JV per se, but they stayed invested in Telco. And in the late 50s, when the government had started saying to all the car makers, GM, Ford, Chrysler, etc., whosoever were there here in India, you indigenize and build here, no more. So 99% of those guys just left. Mercedes-Benz had also offered to make the 180 and the 200 cars here in India. And there were 20 cars which were brought, and they were given to the Indian government to use for a year. Check it out. So Nehru used the car, a lot of guys used the cars, etc. But at the end of that 1 year, they returned the cars back, saying, because they didn't want to, what you call, had some warped policy of the government. Cars are examples of conspicuous consumption. They are evil tools, this, that, etc.
And even today, they're
Even
considered
today, yes,
sin goods, and they
yeah,
cess on GST.
It's stupid. It's stupid. But then politicians, being politicians, they know best what they need to do. But this is the thing which happened, and in the let's get back to Tata Motors after, or Telco as. So then from 1970 onwards, the three-pointed star with the Tata Mercedes-Benz logo was replaced by just the Tata Motors logo, the T. And it carried on.
So when did Tata Motors start with their own R&D?
The R&D they had already invested in the R&D in Pune, the ERC fame, was started in the mid-60s. And a lot of good guys, and Shom, KGK Rao, these were the stalwarts who established that thing. They established ERC. What ERC did for Tata Motors was, at that point in time, the government never even gave permission to import machine tools for manufacturing. So there was only Hindustan Machine Tools, HMT, in Bangalore, who used to make some specialized, like a boring machine or maybe a few really precision lathes, large ones and whatnot, but nothing per se for repeated manufacturing and all that. So Telco bought over one company in Chinchwad in Pune who used to make machine tools. They acquired it and they started making their own machine tools. So much so that by 1972-73, they were selling specialized machine tools to other car making companies.
Okay.
And they had done it all in India.
So that's how Tata Motors came to Pune?
No.
Or Telco came to Pune?
No. Telco came to Pune in the early 60s, 1960-61. They already needed that thing. They knew about that because the trucks were off to a flyer. They were already doing.
Why didn't they set up the R&D in Jamshedpur if the trucks were being manufactured there?
No, so 54 they started, and as they were doing that, then they found a pool of good component suppliers around this, so they invested here as well. The Pune belt, the ancillary belt, owes everything to Tata Motors and no one else. They set up the complete ancillary base in Pune, which I think is not something everyone today knows, But the credit for this goes to Telco as such across over there. So the ERC was set up around about, I think, 63, 64 in Pune, and they started doing that. So after Mercedes-Benz left, Daimler-Benz left Telco, the first thing which they did was they improved they had also got a newer engines things from licensing and whatnot as part of the Mercedes-Benz deal. So they did a newer 6-cylinder engine for their trucks, and then they created a 4-cylinder engine out of that, and the 407 LCV came in.
Let's actually talk about that, because I remember when those wave of LCVs came.
The Indo-Jap LCVs.
Yeah, and in fact, when I saw an Aisha LCV,
Yes.
and that was the first time I saw like a proper molded dash, because before
Correct,
that we had
correct.
ambassadors and they didn't have a proper molded dash. Those LCVs had better quality interiors than the cars that we were driving.
Not just interiors, even the paint job, the surface finishes were awesome, you know.
So how did that whole LCV wave come on?
That LCV wave, again, this was in the 80s. Uh, Not 80s, the late 70s onwards, the government said, okay, road transport should be given a boost and whatnot. So a range of Indo-Jap machines came in, Aisha Mitsubishi, Swaraj Mazda, DCM Toyota,
Alvin Nissan.
Alvin Nissan, and there was also HM Isuzu. That was a big truck, that was a bigger truck. What they did not have, actually speaking, in the India of that era was connectivity and serviceability all across the land. Telco had, they swamped the whole country. Even Ashok Leyland was only what you call sequestered in the south, so to speak, but they had no presence north of, say, Karnataka that much compared to what Tatas were there in every nook and cranny. So the Sardar driver, the driver from down south, if he was in a Tata, he was assured that he would get there and come back and the truck would be running just perfect. And in that vein, when these Indo-Jap LCVs came, they came in at a premium price point, and the 407 came in also at a very good time, and they undercut the Japanese Indo-Jap LCVs by almost about ₹1 lakh, if I am not mistaken. But forget about that. The Japs were very clear that if the payload is 5 tons, the trucks were engineered for 5 tons and not more. The 407s were engineered, their payload was 5 tons, but they were engineered for 9 tons. So the Indian operators, you take more goods, more weights, earn more. That destroyed the Indo-Jap LCVs completely. Plus, the fact remained that they were far more fuel efficient. And
the 407 was all done in India. So it was
everything,
the first example of an
everything,
indigenous automobile outshining the foreigners.
Absolutely. It was all done in Pune. ERC did everything across over here. And it was phenomenal. And I knew I was doing my apprenticeship there in Telco in the 70s. And it was really a fabulous achievement by any Indian company, you know.
So the 4-cylinder engine that was made for the 407, now that formed the base for their idea of a passenger vehicle?
No, not necessarily so. What it did was gave them a fillip saying that yes, they could do an engine on their own, which is fundamentally the real thing. Because post that, when Maruti came in the mid 80s, 83 December and onwards, and we already touched on this in that podcast about Suman Mulgaonkar being handpicked to set up the staffing for Maruti Udyog. What was important at that time, Telco also once again approached the government saying that we'd also apply for a car license. So they went with Honda. And it was the Honda Accord was supposed to be manufactured in India with Telco. And a lot of an MOU was signed, and for 3 years both parties worked tremendously hard. A lot of the manufacturing expertise which was going to go in that project from Honda side, which came in, the Telco guys learned, but the government was not forthcoming because it perceived that if Telco gets the thing, and I think, is wishful thinking, I think this was something which other rival companies didn't like who were making big cars. Think Contessa, think 118NE, because the Telco's proven record was something else. Plus the government also, they knew that Honda had a very strong portfolio which stemmed from the Accord at the top end and went down to smaller cars and all that, which would be directly affecting Maruti. So they dilly-dallied and they did not give Telco any communication. They didn't even care to answer, which was very shabbily. Tatas were treated very shabbily. And in many respects, they continue to be treated shabbily to this day, which is very unfortunate. what happened at that time, I think it's something snapped within the management. And I remember Ratan Tata telling me, I'm notorious in my company for getting us into car manufacture. So he said, let's do our own vehicle.
When was this?
This was in the late 80s. So the first thing which came across was the 206 Tata Mobile, which later became the 207 Tata Mobile. It was just a nomenclature change. But that was the pickup which they did. They wanted to test the waters. And I don't think that there has ever been a more prettier pickup in the country till to date as the Tata Mobile was. It's just that, again, it was a lot of commercial vehicle thought in design, in manufacture, in getting the specs done that way. And again, it was about load carrier and all that. But
I remember a lot of bodybuilders
Yes.
made
Correct.
E-class
Yes,
copies
true,
on
true,
that 207
Yeah,
pickup.
but it was, see, because it was body on a ladder frame, so it enabled these guys, these coach builders to do it. But after they did this, work was already going on for the Tata Estate and the Tata Sierra. Ratan Tata being a lover of American cars, so if you see the Sierra's makeup, it was that it could have been a Ford Bronco or a Chevy Blazer of that era with those big side windows and all that. It was one of the, even till today, it's one of the most iconic cars any Indian manufacturer has
100%.
built, the Sierra.
I was
the
in
Sierra per se.
I was in school that
Yeah.
time, and the first time I saw a Sierra,
Yeah,
man,
means
that was
it was a young boy's dream. Like so many people want posters of the Lamborghini on their walls. Indian kids wanted to have posters of the Sierra on their walls, and it was a real great stunner to behold.
Even their marketing, their ads for the
Yes.
Sierra, they're even
Superb.
today, if you
Yeah.
watch it on YouTube,
Exactly.
iconic ads.
So unfortunately, what had happened was it was a big steep learning curve for them, and they had still not got. They had made a vehicle to look like a car, but there was still a lot of commercial vehicle way of thought into so many things. Of the repertoire of the entire project was that car was very heavy. The engines were noisy. They were learning systems, like talk about power steering, talk about air conditioning, talk about interior fit and finish.
Yeah, power windows. I remember.
Yeah, I know.
This was one of the first cars
yes,
with power,
yes,
everything.
Yes. So what I'm saying, the thought was right. The execution left a lot to be desired. But one thing they got right, and this is something they got the ride and handling perfect. The Tata cars are the best ride quality of any cars in the country till then. No one could match them. No one means just about no one could match. So these two cars got them going, and then came the Sumo. The Sumo was really something else.
Adil, before you go to the Sumo, the engine, where did the engine come from? Was it derived from their commercial vehicles? Was it a whole new engine?
No, it was both. It was derived from a lot of the commercial vehicle thought. Many people unkindly also said that it was a copy of a Peugeot engine. It could have been, but it was not because it was done internally. Sure, every engine manufacturer, even the Japanese, use a lot of engine consultants in Europe and elsewhere. Tata's also did the same thing. So there is no going away from or inferring something else. But those engines, and they kept on refining them.
And also, this was the first passenger diesel vehicle in the country.
Yes, it was. It was.
After the Ambassador, obviously, the Ambassador also.
No, the Ambassador had, but Ambassador didn't push it. They didn't push it because an Ambassador got it from Isuzu. So whatever these guys did was entirely ground up all Indian, And I think this thought, all Indian thought, escapes so many people here right now. So it's easy to badmouth something, but these guys were the people who had the courage of conviction to go ahead on this route,
Then the Tata Sumo.
The Sumo was just, I think it was just right sort of thinking to get into usable family sort of a vehicle, tall, robust, spacious, etc. and suddenly you saw a Zen was at 3,30,000, the Sumo was there at 3,11,000. I know because I owned both of them. And it was no contest, and the Sumo was hardy, it would go anywhere. Actually, the Sumo had Mahindra on the run, and I think that was a wake-up call for Mahindras as such. And the Sumo ruled the roost for a long time until I think Tata's made a cardinal error. Their product planning team made a cardinal error. They started to what you call go into very many different prongs of this thing. People carrier, taxi service across. Okay, but then they also made a mistake by what you call getting the 407's big 3-liter diesel engine, put it across that.
The Spatio.
The Spatio. So post the Spatio and all that, at that point in time, Tata Motors was a little too scattered in its mind and in its approach and whatnot. There were too many.
Could you say arrogant also because they tasted so much success?
Let me put it this way, more than arrogance, they were overly bureaucratic in their approach. Actually speaking, if anyone could give the Indian government to shame, it could have been Tata Motors there. The bureaucratic setup was massive, Plus also, one more thing was that of all companies, Tata Motors had not embraced press relations so much so as it would have been correct for any car company to do so. But then that was the case with other companies also. But more so, Tata Motors was much aloof on that front, So when it needed friends, it didn't have any to call upon. So that sort of a thing was there. And the Sumo, suddenly they just lost the plot with it, because if the Sumo had got the sort of thought process which Mahindra's has got right now, the Sumo would have been one hell of a strong brand on its own across the decades,
Because the Sumo could hold maybe 5 more people than a Bolero. The space inside was massive.
Yeah, yes, I know that. No, but what I'm saying is, it was just the right vehicle at the right time with the right price points, with right everything. So they just lost it there,
So the Sumo was a mass market vehicle.
Yes.
And Tata Motors was also working on the most premium vehicle in the country, the Safari.
But the Safari came across because they knew that the Sumo had done that. So the thing is, this was a top-down approach. It was all got to do with Ratan Tata's global sort of vision in that sense. And I remember he had told me that he wants to see that he wants India to have cars which they could be proud of. That was one underlying theme of his, and no one could fault him on that front. So I know he had told me about he wanted to do a van like the Toyota Previa. The first all monocoque version which any car maker in India had done, apart from Maruti. Again, I don't consider Maruti an all-Indian vehicle manufacturer. They had done the 207 monocoque van, which that showed at one of their AGMs in 96 or 97. And it was just like that, with the Sumo engine, really, and outfitted superbly. Unfortunately, they didn't put it into production because the Safari was something they were working on. And Tata Motors was working out with a firm known as IAD. And they had designed, given design inputs for the car. And the Safari was terrific. Means it became an icon on its own. No one could even understand.
The Safari came after the Sumo or before the Sumo?
After the Sumo.
After the Sumo.
It came just 1 year before the Indica was unveiled, And it suddenly spawned a class for itself amongst everyone. Means it was the Indian Mitsubishi Pajero, so to speak, And fittingly so. Yes, it was not perfect, but it had a presence. And SUVs even today, any and everyone masquerading as SUVs also with that form, they do it for that purpose. So it just stood out from everyone else on the road.
You spoke about ride and handling. The Safari was really comfortable.
Not
lots
just that.
Of space.
It had a very different driving position. You were sitting too tall compared to anywhere, but still it was superb, you know.
Yeah. And for its time, it was terrific. But those were all the ladder frame
Yes,
vehicles.
yes,
Tata Motors were also working on the Indica.
yes.
Now, the Indica demanded a sea change in thought process, in the way they went about designing, engineering a car. Of course, India had never done a car on its own. Like you said,
Not at
Maruti
all.
had got everything from Japan,
Yes,
from
yes.
Suzuki. Here was an effort to do an
Maruti was
Indian
not even
vehicle.
in Tata's class, actually speaking, to speak about
Right?
on this front.
So to make that leap would have taken a solid amount of gumption on the part of Tata Motors senior
Not just
management, right?
gumption, what happened was there, uh, Ratan Tata was and is still an automotive enthusiast par excellence. And maybe it's got to do with the Bawa blood in all of us who are madcaps as far as automobiles are concerned. But what he did was he had got, at that point in time, he had got 2, 3 good lieutenants around him.
Who were they?
Girish Wagh was one of them,
Who's now looking after the commercial vehicles?
of the commercial vehicles. I forget a few names, but they were there. Mr. Rawal was there, who was the head of the Pune manufacturing unit. So there were 3, 4, and of course the guys at R&D, Mr. Shom and all those guys were there. What they did was they split up everything. They understood what they needed was better manufacturing processes. So what do we do? So they scoured the globe, and there was one not old, there was a plant in Australia owned by Nissan, which had shut down. Modern plant, they got it for a song. That came to, that became the K block for the Indica.
So basically, they disassembled the plant in Australia, reassembled it identically in India.
in Pune.
Yeah.
So they did that. They invested in new presses. They wanted to. One thing they learned from the Safari was they needed to get their surface finish of their pressings top notch, because if you want to do a great paint job, it doesn't depend on the quality of the paints, it depends on your surfacing of the metal. So they didn't skimp on that. They got idea design of Turin to style the car. I must say that idea design had already done the Fiat Palio.
The Project 178
Yes. So they had done the Palio. So these guys did the Indica for them. But before we go on to that, what was the philosophy behind the Indica? In Ratan Tata's own words, he says, we want to, what you call, make a car which will have the price point of a Maruti Zen, which have the interior space of an Ambassador, and it could sell close to the price of a Maruti 800.
Yeah.
Very clearly defined.
And the
objective.
operating cost of a diesel.
Operating cost of a diesel. So it was that sort of, no one could ever go against this grain of thought. And I think that panned off superbly well. So when you saw the car, I remember when I saw the car couple of weeks before Auto Expo 1990, and it was, you opened the door, ingress and egress was so natural. No Indian car had that thing. You got inside. Yes, there were a lot of plasticky things because it was being built to a price and whatnot. But it was really something to behold. The styling was, today you can say it's way plain Jane. Even I thought at that time, but it was something which no one else had. And the compelling thing was not the style alone, it was the entire package which was compelling. So you took everything into account: space, footprint on the road, you saw the easy way you could get in and out. It's not just elbow room, but also you had a very tall ceiling thing. So it was very airy, it was not claustrophobic. Great boot size, etc. Everything was terrific, and I think price points, I remember we were there in Bombay when they were going to announce the price of the car, and for the first time in the history of Maruti Udyog dropped its pants. Dropped its pricing. They announced a reduction in their pricing 6 or 4 hours before the Indica pricing was to be announced. That is how seriously this project was perceived. And at Auto Expo, when I remember I was there when they unveiled the car, and there were these two directors from Fiat, I don't recollect their names. As soon as the car was unveiled, you could see the look of disbelief on their faces because you could make out the size and the proportions were so close to the Palio. But it was Italian car, the great Italian car designers, whosoever, be it Pininfarina, Bertone, Zaccato, they have sold one design with different cues to tens of car makers. So it's here in India where we say, oh, it's not, but it was different. So
And also, it was the first small car with a diesel engine.
it was the first small car with a diesel
I
engine.
remember after that, Maruti went and scored the world for a diesel engine, and they got the Peugeot diesel in the Zen.
This, I remember not just that, when the Zen, that TUD3,
TUD5.
TUD5 was such a heavy piece of thing, and the Maruti's very lightweight cars, they're built to a different philosophy, and they were never built to take diesel. So the Zen diesel, sometimes it would not turn if you're going fast because that sheer weight would, even if you turn the wheels, it still keep on going straight.
I remember when we got the Zen diesel to test at Overdrive, you sent me to Satara to pick up the car from the dealership. We filled up fuel once, and I think we had it for a month, and we didn't fill up again because the fuel efficiency was just was terrific.
Terrific.
But the noise of that
yes,
engine and, like you said, the weight and everything, that was ridiculous.
So the Indica it was an immediate success from the get-go. Many people, I think they got over 150,000 bookings immediately. And in the first year, they did something in the region about 40 or 45,000 units.
But all was not well because
no, all was not. So I'm coming to that.
A year later, when I joined, I remember that you guys, Overdrive, was in the doghouse because Indica didn't win some comparison test, and you all wrote something critical. So Overdrive was in the doghouse as far as Tata Motors was concerned. So what was it?
No, so again the question is very important. Overdrive was also owned by the Tatas.
Yeah.
And this is one facet of the Tatas which the world doesn't know or doesn't appreciate, is that we were allowed to do our own thing. So, and when we had started the magazine, before we had an audience with Mr. Tata, and he says, you guys should be honest. And we had said, at that time we said the car handles like a boat. We did. So there were a lot of things, and a lot of times it was the newness of the approach which had not been fine-tuned by the Tatas. They were learning practically every day. And to compound matters, one of the old Tata hands who had gone away to another car company, he tried to scuttle quite a lot of things. So they knew that the Indica had glitches here and there, but they got these taxi drivers who had taken the Indica, and they hired taxi drivers for about a month on different highways and whatnot. And they were just told to stand on the highways with the bonnets open.
No, I heard about that.
But it's a fact.
Actually,
it's a fact. It's a fact.
I thought it was just
it's a fact. It's a fact. This was done, but it backfired because the guys who saved Tatas then were the taxi drivers, because they got their monies were, everyone was doing 10, 12,000 kilometers a year. The taxi guys were doing 55, 60,000 kilometers per year. So their investments were immediately recouped, and the Indica became flavor of the month, a flavor of the day for every one of them. Then one of the key things which was done was wheel alignment was not a good strong point of the original Indica. Again, a lot of re-engineering happened, and it was the floor pan which used to flex from the bottom. So these guys did some critical analytical work, and they found that was, and they got 2 or 3 big floor pans re-engineered with more rethought of implants there. It cured that thing, and the Indica V2 came in. And
so the V2 was the transformative car,
absolutely.
Right?
No, because they were learning. So, like I said, monocoque ladder on body on ladder, two different animals altogether. So they were learning, and this sort of learning process helped them. So from the Indica, you went on to the Manza, you went on to the Indica Estate, you went on to the Indica CS. And what I'm saying is, everyone thought Ratan Tata has made a blunder, put his company into. But guys, understand one thing: over the lifespan of the Indica, it did 1.4 million units of all body styles put together.
Let's not forget, and we'll talk about that later, the Nexon is actually originated from the Indica.
Yeah.
The
So
Tiago
yeah.
is originated from the Indica.
Yeah,
So it is still
no,
in
no,
service.
No, so but what I'm saying is the fact of the matter is basic Indica platform, that family, 1.4 million units over 11 or a 12-year period is nothing to be what you call something for someone to deride or decry on. It's a phenomenal success in that sort of.
So we had the Indica, then we had the Indica 2000, I
Yes.
remember, the petrol. Then we had the Indica V2. And the V2 actually put fire in Tata Motors' belly. That's really rocketed their sales. And that went strong for a while. We also had the Indigo, which was the sedan,
Yes.
the Marina, which was the Estate. After that, we had the Vista, which was the all-new Indica, except nobody really knew that it was an all-new
Correct.
Indica. They thought that it was
But
one
there
facelift
again,
after the
but,
other.
But there again, this is something where I think the product planners failed to. It's the Vista and also the second generation Safari. Visually, they didn't differ from the originals. So there had to be some differentiation there. Great cars, but they what do you call tripped upon this aspect.
So the Vista, that spawned the Manza, which was the
Yes,
sedan.
yes.
The Estate never came about because the Indica Estate, to my eye at least, I think that was the nicest proportion, the best looking.
My brother had one, and he used it for over 110,000 kilometers.
And looked great, ran really well.
It gave him service 110,000 kilometers, nothing to what you call laugh about.
But Tata Motors had a quality issue.
Yes.
When we had our long-term car, I had the
quality
V2.
issue, because you have to see quality issue in comparison to what else is on the market. Tata Motors, and I'm sure I'll be pilloried for saying this, but many a time took the approach that we are an Indian company, so please bear with us. After a certain point in time, no one will bear with you. If you cannot what you call, cars ran great, but door handles didn't work, windows didn't go up and down, AC suddenly didn't what you call stop. These sort of things were hygiene, and they did not look at that.
Did that attitude change, and if it did, when did that happen? In your opinion?
When I think they had plummeted to really dire state around about 2010, 2011. It was really something which was not in a good frame of mind, and plus also people within the company, heads of departments, were what you call acting as overlords of their own, and many a time egos there. There was no one for a long time. There was no managing director of the company. So that is a different topic. I don't want to get into that. That was, but when you don't have someone who will call the shots, Ratan Tata could not. You cannot have Ratan Tata devoting 31 days of the month to Tata Motors. At best, he could devote an hour or so every second day to Tata Motors.
So we are talking about after Dr. Sumantran left.
Yeah, but there also he was, yes. No, it was before. The thing is that we had two executive directors, Dr. Sumantran and what was his name here? Ravikant. So when at that point in time, this thing happened so much that they needed a managing director per se. And that's when Ravikant was elevated to managing director. At that point in time, then Sumantran was integral to product planning. So he had done a lot of bench work on that front. What happened after that was, whatever this thing, Ravikant was a great man manager. Honestly speaking, he was really great in that sort of sense. And they had like a dire situation that they were with their backs to the wall, and they said, guys, let's shape up, no more talking at cross purposes, etc. And they said, okay, what do we do now? At that point in time, I must say one thing. The design department there in Tata Motors said, we need to refresh our look. Complete View had to do that. You must understand also where these designers came from. They had seen the writing on the wall as to what transformed Bajaj Auto, the Pulsar and all that. It was a triumph of design and everything, engineering. So they said, can we pick up one cue from there? And at that point in time, they said, yes, we need to shed this dowdy image of the Tata cars and we need to make them more relevant to the times. So the go-ahead was grudgingly given. And we got the Bolt, which was still the Vista per se, and we got the Zest. Those two cars were just the stopgap fillers again. And work was already going on, and then Cyrus Mistry came in. And the go-ahead was full on. They said, just guys go. So under that patronship across over there, you got the Tiago, you got the Tigor, you got the Nexon, you got everything going on over there. The Harrier, the Safari, everything which you see was from that perspective onwards. And the people who made it happen, the design team, Pratap Bose and Ajay Saran Sharma, these two guys fought against everyone in the company, saying, first look should be the defining look if you want to drive. And let's not forget, we also had marketing guy who came from Maruti, and
Mayank Parekh.
Mayank Parekh at that time said his biggest job is not just to sell cars. His biggest job is to get a Tata Motors car into the top 3 of a customer's psyche when it came time to. A lot of good things happened around that. Then you got the German Buschek coming in to head manufacturing, and that was, I think, the foundation for where the real springboard happened for Tata Motors as we see it today. And it just went on and on from there. They got product quality tightened up, they got the cars looked great, and the youngest portfolio around about in the middle of the last decade, if you saw, Tata Motors had the newest and the freshest and the youngest portfolio in the Indian automotive industry.
Yeah. Now, this podcast has gone on for very long, but we have to talk about the Nano, because the Nano story, you can't talk about Tata Motors and not talk about the Nano.
It was, I feel, and so do many elsewhere in the globe as well feel, it was one of the defining designs in automotive, in the automotive world in this century. Marvel of packaging is just that it was built to a price, to what you call give it to or removing people.
From taking people from the scooters
Not
into
just
cars,
that,
right?
and not just that, their well-being was far more important.
Yeah, I remember, because at
It
the
was-
Auto
it-
Expo,
yeah.
when it was unveiled,
Yes.
Ratan Tata had that holographic image
Yes,
of
true.
a family,
On a scooter.
father, mother, two
And two
kids
kids.
on a scooter
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
rain. And he
yeah.
said that the idea was to take them
Yes,
out of that scooter
true,
and put them
true.
in a car with a roof over their heads.
And if you see everything, I was amazed to see a Nano in the Deutsche Museum in Germany, in Munich. Why, I asked them, and they were there with a lot of people, guys, that this is a defining people's car for this century. Unfortunately, there were so many people and companies against the Tatas. Plus, Ratan Tata's famous words is, if you put a gun to my head, you kindly take it away or you pull the trigger. Because I will not change my mind. And when the West Bengal government did what it did, if you go to Singur right now and see what is there.
It would have transformed the region, the manufacturing over there, right?
but politics.
Yeah.
So, plus then you had the Greens. You had Sunita Narayan
Yeah.
saying, oh my God, so many cars will come on that thing. Then Maruti's did its own shenanigans behind the scene. Some other scooter makers did their own thing. But irrespective of all that, it was a triumph of mind over matter. And what Tata got was appreciation that, guys, Indians do know how to build cars, how to design cars. Sure, at that price point, you can't have the whole world. It came in at a time when aspirations of the Indian middle class were really taking off. So no one wanted a cheap car.
Yeah.
So, and plus, to be honest, the Tata Motors marketing promotions were definitely not any thing to what you call really talk about, zoom in. Later on, they realized what was needed and all that. I had a Nano. I bought one for my wife. The full-blown Nano automatic AMD transmission, air conditioning, power steering. It was great. But till even then, they didn't have a disc brake setup on the front wheels. It need, because she was very perky. She would dart in and out of traffic like a two-wheeler. It was a wonderful car, you know. But yes, the Nano was a disruptor.
You could say that the Nano is what has given birth to the other cost-effective cars, like the Quid. The
Yes,
whole idea came about.
absolutely.
Carlos Ghosn saw that, and then they first did a tie-up with Bajaj Auto. That nothing happened out of it, but the Quid actually had its roots in what they saw
it's
with
a
the
fact.
Nano.
It's a fact. It's a fact. Actually speaking, the Renault engineers worked for 2 years with the Bajaj Auto team. And understand one thing, the Bajaj Auto backend is probably the most profitable backend of any automotive maker in the world, barring Porsche. And they learned from that thing the art of making more with less is exactly what they learned from Bajaj Auto. And the Tata Motor guys had already shown them the way. So, yes, the Nano is a seminal point in global automotive history. It's not just about India. In the whole world, the Nano was just probably the finest automotive design to come in. Sadly, it came in 20 years too late in our country.
Yeah. So that was the Nano, and the other thing that is
Now, just a minute. I want to go one more thing.
yeah, sure.
When the Nano came in, India was just about, say, if you take Maruti as the revolution began with 1984, 83, 84. We were already 84 years away from the automotive experience which the country needed. For Tata Motors to have leapfrog from 83, 84 to when the Nano came in, just imagine in just a short period of 18, 20 years, they had leapfrog there. So, if they had been given the onus to do the cars from the 50s, late 50s, just imagine where
Our
the
roads
country
would have looked completely
yeah.
different.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, so many missed opportunities in socialist India. You just can't hide behind saying, oh, we are trying to do this for the poor. Don't keep us poor, no? It's about your mind. Expand your mind, look at the bigger picture, be visionary. You were always dumping down private enterprise. And the strength of our country is our private enterprise.
Yeah. There's also the Mercedes-Benz story, but I think we'll keep that for later.
Yes.
Because this is going to go on for really long. So we'll do one on 30 years of Mercedes-Benz in India. We'll do a podcast on
Yes.
that next. But I want to talk about the next big step and what is fueling, actually two big steps. The first is Jaguar-Land Rover. There's this story about how when Tata Motors were on their knees after the first year of the Indica and Tata Motors had their first losses, Ratan Tata was so disillusioned that he went looking for a buyer for the passenger car division. They went to Ford, they went to Dearborn, and there they were told that why did you even get into car making when you did not know about car making?
Arrogant Yankee manner.
So that story, and then a decade, not even a decade later, they went and bailed out Ford and bought out Jaguar and Land Rover from the Ford portfolio. So
Not just a decade later, within about 6-7 years.
6-7 years. That was actually Indica V2, right? That was one of the strengths, and that's how Tata Motors had the cash to go and buy it out. Let's talk about how Tata Motors nurtured these two brands and brought it to where it is today.
Okay, what was the key thing behind after acquiring the brands was the fact that they knew that Jaguar Land Rover had a character and a soul of its own, which could not be merged within the Tata Motors portfolio. So they had to carve their own furrow and let that be there with people who best knew how to manage the characteristics of what made a Jaguar and a Land Rover a Land. This is something which a hands-off approach on that front. They went. One other thing they were very what you call lucky to have was Ford had invested some
Crazy sums of
crazy
money.
stuff
Yeah.
money. These guys got it for a song, but
Yeah.
more importantly, the engineering, production engineering, and the sign off for 7-8 models.
Especially that L322, the
So
Range Rover.
everything was already signed in and ready.
Yeah.
So they were lucky and they got that. Sure, in the middle they also had this 2008 Lehman crisis and whatnot. But it, and everyone, I remember in Indian industry, so many industrialists who said, "Kya वापस Ratan Tata ने mistake कर दिया." But if you, they said the same thing as the Indica. It was not a mistake as it transpired, and so was the case even with Jaguar Land Rover. So the key thing was Jaguar retained its quintessential charm. Range Rover did everything what it wanted to do, but I think Range Rover has lost its way. It's become too bulky, too trying to ape the Germans. I think if you see the old Land Rovers and whatnot, they were lit, small, mountain goats. They could do anything. They have gone away from there. You
Adil,
cannot
I
go.
always had this thing that the last generation Defender, the body on frame
yeah,
Defender,
yeah.
why didn't they ship the tooling for that to India and why didn't they continue
I
with
just,
it?
this is where you need to have product planners with a vision which is larger than their, what do you call, corner office sort of stuff. You know, this is where you need to do that. And trust me, that car will still be relevant here today.
Yeah, it would be.
It can still be
It would
relevant.
be affordable. It would be
Absolutely.
hardy. It would go anywhere. And with
Absolutely.
that kind of design, there would be a proper export market also for it.
One more thing I can say across over there. I've tried to find out who's the car guy within Tata Motors to this day. Apart from Ratan Tata and for a long time, for a short time with Cyrus Mistry, I have not seen any car guy within the company. Maybe that is fundamentally one of the reasons why such things have not happened. You need car guys, damn it. I don't see a car guy.
But you also have to say that there has been some sort of technology transfer from JLR to
Yes,
Tata Motors.
of course, why
the
not?
Harrier platform. Okay, the Harrier platform, the steel platform, the Defender is
That's okay.
Discovery
That's
is
okay.
Aluminum, but there is transfer,
No,
right?
but yeah,
the design.
That's
you know,
the Hexa. You forget the
Yeah.
Hexa, one of the finest vehicles in the country which Tata Motors produced. And sadly, they dropped it like the Sumo. They dropped the ball there.
You had the Aria before it, then you had the Hexa. You want to go into that a little bit?
The Aria again suffered from a lot of indecision. Did not.
Let's put that into perspective for our younger viewers. The Aria was a Innova rival,
Yes.
but with four-wheel drive. So it had like cool aspects to it, designed actually styled really well.
Very well.
Was it Pratap's Sports?
Yeah,
styling?
it was Pratap's thing itself.
So continue, Adil, please.
So the Aria came in, but it again lots of glitches. So it was stopped, and then they refined the design, and I
Created
remember
the Hexa, right?
and the second generation Innova came about 7-8 months before the Hexa, and they had already got this thing going. I bought a Innova at that time, the second generation Innova, to replace my first generation. I think I made a mistake. I should have kept the first generation Innova. It was great. And so when I drove the Hexa, immediately I said nothing doing. The second generation Innovas to go, because the Hexa was an involving car to drive. It had got everything. The interior, the craftsmanship of the interior, again, Land Rover, Range Rover derived. The platform was awesome. The transmission, they had a automatic transmission from an ex-General Motors plant in Europe. The engine was so supremely matched to it. Rear wheel drive, the rear wheel joy of driving a rear wheel.
And tough as nails. I've driven it in the Northeast.
I had the car for over 5.5 or 6 years. I had a BMW 5 Series also at that time. There was not a rattle or squeak at the end of the 6 years I had the Hexa. Not a rattle or squeak. The BMW was squeaking from day one. So that was the sort of a thing, you know. And I just can't imagine they forgot the Hexa and they didn't think about doing a. Just think, look at what Mahindra has done with the Thar. They don't have a front-wheel drive Thar.
Yeah.
They have a rear-wheel drive Thar and a four-wheel.
Yeah.
Okay, forget the Hexa had a four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive layout, but it was more to do with the rear-wheel drive Hexa, which was a thing. And they said, oh, we are trying to do. Once you get away from north-south engine location to an east-west, and that thought sticks in your head, then all potents of performance-oriented motoring are lost.
So to take that forward, okay, Hexa, fine, all-wheel drive, but with the Safari, the current Safari that is there right now, the Safari always had that heritage of being a 4x4, and now it's pure front-wheel drive. Does that bug you?
It bugs me that it is not rear-wheel drive. More than I have a Safari now. From the Hexa, we moved on to. It's a great vehicle, mind you. It's just that because I still have the taste and the afterglow and that appreciation for the Hexa, that thing is still not rubbed off completely. This Safari has a tough task to do for the Adil Darukhanawala of this world to get to grips with. But it's a great car, and the newer Safari, the style things which they have done. Oh, they are smashing in every aspect.
Yeah, and now you see the facelift
that's
Safari.
What I meant.
It's now only 3-4 months since, or maybe 5-6 months. But you see so many of them on the road.
They look great.
They look really good. And in black, I think it looks gangster. I think it's like stunning. Even the Harrier and the Safari both. In fact, you talked about design briefly. Today, Tata Motors, in terms of design, Pratap Bose has moved on, but
he's given a legacy. See, what has happened is you don't change a winning legacy or a winning recipe, you know, and that is going on. And
so the team led by Martin Ullrich now, the stuff that they're turning out.
Look at Martin Ullrich, look at Salil. There are so many guys there who are really the true heroes of this revolution which they've kept on going. And you have to hand it to them that they are not stopping. That's a very, very important thing.
So we will talk about the electrics because that is the future. And you know, electrics is what's really fueling Tata Motors' transformation today, but also the Nexon. Now, I remember, what was it, 10 years ago when we gave the Nexon the car of the year. That was the same time as the Compass, and everybody else gave the Compass the car of the year. We gave the Nexon the car of the year, and all of them said that, no, these monkeys don't know what they're doing, right?
Well, it's always good to have the last laugh. The question is, you got to know, one of the things which we did and which we have always impressed upon right from day one is that you've got to see the car which you are selecting for a car of the year or whatever, is it fit for purpose in its class? And there has got to be a certain thought process where you have to see which car will make an impression in its class over its rival in the car of the year thing. And it was a no-brainer there. And anyway, I think the Nexon edged it by 1 point over the Compass there. And it was the right recipe. You just think about it. The Brezza came in after that. Everyone wanted a share of that pie. By that time, Tata Motors did another masterstroke. They had the Punch. They come today. If you see, everyone is hurrying to have a finger in each of these segments across. So, and this is one of the points which not many people they know, but they just see through it. Every new concept, the amount of concepts Tata Motors did in the business, put it across to the rivals, and you'll see that everyone has followed it rather than made a new concept. Or the Marina, the Indigo CS, everything.
So the Indigo CS, CS for compact sedan. Tata Motors' product planners, probably, or maybe engineers, they were the first to cotton onto this idea
Yes.
that if you chop the boot a little bit,
Yes.
you can squeeze a sedan in
True.
under 4 meters and you can really price it well.
Yeah.
So they were the first guys to
No,
do a compact sedan.
they got the benefits of the excise duty
Yes.
prevailing then.
Yes.
And all. So to give value to the masses, everything, whatever they did in so many ways, it's been a Tata Motors hallmark.
Now let's talk about
But
electrification.
Tata Motors doesn't what you call highlight these things, which I feel is a black mark against them. You
Okay.
cannot be so reticent about that.
You know, none of our Indian manufacturers, they don't really preserve history. Like Tata Motors, they've got so many cars in their backstory, so many trucks also.
Massive.
A nice Tata Motors museum, maybe in Pune, they've got lots of
Lots,
space
absolutely,
in Pune, right?
absolutely.
A showcase of their entire history.
Absolutely.
Because today, where do the kids learn about all of this, right? Okay, they watch this podcast. This is a very long podcast,
They asked
so I
me
don't
to
know
do
kids will
they asked
watch
me
it
to
also.
do a book on their history, and then they went to sleep. It's been 2 years since we signed an MOU.
So there you have it. But you know, like
It's a shocker,
nice-
and now
yeah,
they're getting into electric cars.
yeah. So let's go to electric
Yeah.
cars. Now, I was doing the research for our Indica Gone But Not Forgotten, which is there on the Evo India YouTube channel, that's when it came back to me that the first electric car was actually the Indica Electric that Tata
Yes.
Motors showcased so many
Many-
years ago. When they bought over that Norwegian company, they
Yes,
started
true,
doing their
true,
R&D in the UK. Adil, what is your memory of Tata Motors' electric journey?
Not just that, with Tata Technologies, they also did a small, nano-sized electric car. A lot of things which Tata Motors did, they did a lot of progress. Tata Technologies is in the cutting edge of so many different things in so many spheres: hydrogen, electric materials, defense. So they tapped into all those sort of things. But the key thing is that the quickest I've seen any Indian car company see the writing on the wall and move towards that is Tata Motors with electrics. Even though Mahindra got going with
Buying Reva.
Reva and then also doing the e-Verito and whatnot and all that. These guys, unbeknown to many, even many of us, they were working on an electric program much before. And I think they got the sums right when they did that Norwegian
Acquisition,
Indica.
yeah.
And it worked for a long time. And at that point in time, battery technology was not something which was easily available to Indian manufacturers. But given their contacts and given their global perspective, they knew what they wanted to do. As I see it today, all those things, they have been working on it for almost about 10, 12 years now.
Yeah, so the Indica, the first
Yeah.
generation Indica had an electric
Yeah.
powertrain.
So-
Then the Vista was entered into the X Prize in the
Yes.
in the US.
Yes.
Also that London to Brighton run
True,
something
true, true.
in the UK where it won some prizes also. So there was a lot of testing, learning the ropes
Yeah.
about this electric mobility business.
Yeah, because electric cars compared to internal combustion engine cars, you need a different thought process altogether, especially in the propulsion side of things.
Yeah.
And then packaging it also is another different aspect. So the team which was that small team which worked on electrics suddenly gathered moss, and then they realized that I think it's got to do with reading the way the wind is blowing in the corridors of power. What has electromobility done is all our mandarins, sometimes our mandarins in the government, they also see across chance upon a thing. If China is putting so much of its effort towards electromobility, don't you think that we'll just get into a position where we could do the same? At least there will be not a 90-year gap between development of an internal engine car to where India was. We'd have a gap of only about 10 years. So I think the Tata Motors guys made a wise decision there.
I think that game changer was that government order which Tata was competing with
No,
Mahindra and they got that
but
order. And
yes,
that is what moved things forward,
yes,
right?
to a certain extent, yes. But what I'm still saying across over there is, they have done all that thing and they are reaping the benefits of all that. They have also got the other car makers thinking, oh boy, we are late. These guys. And there's nothing wrong in being leaders. And I'm so happy that Tata Motors has done that. But there's a bit of a caution. Don't put all your eggs in the electric basket. You can't, because as I see it, no one can, you have to be technology agnostic. It cannot be electrics over ICs. The IC has got still a big future. And you need, just yesterday on Automotive News Europe, we got the word that Mercedes-Benz has decreed that what the world needs is not electric cars, but cheaper, bargain priced petrol and diesel engine cars. And given the way the electric car market, the electric car business in Europe, in US, in Japan, in many has plummeted big time, should tell its own story.
But what I love about the fact about Tata's electric story is that the sales, the success of it has actually fueled development of combustion engines. So
has to now,
so Tata's big drawback has always been that, okay, the diesels were good, the petrols didn't have punch. Like in the punch, the ICE punch didn't have punch. But now at the last Auto Expo, they showcased a new range of petrol engines that will come.
For that, you have to, what you call, really fly the flag for Mahindra. The way the Mahindra engine technology has happened. The question is, many a time I've seen we are so fixated on fuel efficiency. You cannot dumb down engines to just deliver fuel efficiency, because people will then stress the car, they won't put the foot on the throttle, and it will just not move. You need cars which will breathe freely, will perform well. A good performing car is also a good, very efficient machine. You just can't make efficiency only for fuel. You need to give it for performance and let it breathe.
Yeah, and they do something for the soul of the car enthusiast.
It has to.
Also.
That goes without saying. That, but the fact of the matter is, any and everyone, and today an Indian market is, fuel efficiency doesn't come on top of the criteria at all. You need to feel good driving a car.
You need to turn back and look at the car once you park
need to
it.
what you call feel good. I think Tata Motors learned this very late.
But better late than never.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
today, look at the Nexon. The Nexon is a facelift, right? But it looks stunning.
It's
I think it's just incredible. We already spoke about the Harrier and the Safari, and what I'm really waiting forward to, the Sierra. That the new Sierra is coming.
Yes.
We saw the concept.
No, not just the Sierra, because you see all the new cars which are there in the portfolio now. You've got glimpses, you've got small highlights about detailing and whatnot. I think it is suddenly leapfrogging Tatas from the 20th to the 22nd century. 21st is just
honestly, I am like super keen on the Sierra.
Yes.
The Curvv, I saw it at the Bharat Mobility Show. I'm still scratching my head over it because it looks like an Urus with small wheels.
True.
That the proportions to my eye are off. I like the SUV coupe design. It is a differentiator, and that's cool. But I think the stance is off. It reminds me of the Indica at the start. Remember how we used to criticize the size of the wheels and the gap in the wheel arches?
Yes, the wheel wells.
It sorts of reminds me of that. I hope it's still in concept stage.
The question is, this is also where the Indian car industry as a whole has grown up. They have understood that they need meatier tires, bigger diameter wheels, which really aid in so many ways, ride and handling, safety, even aesthetics.
Adil, great point. We have to talk about safety.
Yes.
The only car manufacturer with every car rated by either G NCAP or B NCAP.
No, but more than that, Tata Motors taught the ARI and Natrax and everyone else the art of safety engineering in a car. They were the first to have a crash test facility at their Pimpri plant in Pune. Before even the government thought about it, before ARI could dream. In fact, ARI used to get other rival cars to be tested there. So you can understand that.
But just look at the focus. No, this is an Indian manufacturer which does not have the scale of any of the global OEMs. But they still have focus. They could have cut corners there, right? Easiest thing to do.
Yeah, but this is again, I think this is about that self-reliance, being denied so many opportunities in the last 50 years before they got going. That has this one core strength of Tata's to forget it, let's do it ourselves. And I think, fine, they have not had success immediately, but overall, they are reaping the benefits of all that investments they have made. And it's not money, investment in technology, in people to make that technology work. I think that is fabulous. And this is something which is not talked about much in car circles, in automotive circles, because this is a company which is understated, keeps its mouth shut more often than not. It sometimes has to open its mouth, not to boast, but to what you call disseminate the right information to a larger group. Because today, if you see you have got connectivity in cars, why? You need the world to come into your cars, communicate. Tata Motors needs to do that.
Adil, Motorsport. Now, I remember the Indica, when you went to see the Indigo, even before it was called the Indigo, when it was called the Indica sedan, that time they showed the Indica Sport, which was that yellow Indica with 10 bhp more, nice steering wheel, brushed aluminum pedals. But nothing really came out of it. We drove the Indica rally. I did the safety car, drove the safety car in a couple of rallies with it. They had the other concepts. There was that Racemo, right?
No, but they had one more thing. They had a 2-liter Magna engine, twin overhead cams, Bosch Motoronic fuel injection, and it was put in Naren Karthikeyan's Formula 3 car, which was what you call driven at ERC test track. They had done quite a lot. It was just that a lot of engineers there were hesitant to put their hand up and say, I will take onus to do this, because racing is a black art for guys who do production cars and whatnot. And their well-being within the company, the KRAs and whatnot, get affected if they don't show. And we are an Indian company who wants results as of yesterday, even before we have begun. So yes, so Motorsport is one slightly off target theme which Tata Motors.
But sporty cars, they showed the Aria. So before the Aria was an
not
Innova
just,
rival.
they had the JTD cars.
The JTP.
JTP cars. And 200 cars were built. There's a fan following for those guys who have got their right to me even till today. And they are passionate about that. So maybe yes, but then that requires a different mind. See, they are, right now Tata Motors is in an absolute hyperdrive as far as the mass market is concerned. So I don't think they have the resources, the human resources, to look at 1,000 cars.
But now they're still working on a hot Ultras, the Ultras Racer.
I hope so. I hope so.
What do you think of the Racer name?
I think that's too far-fetched. They need to do something better than that.
Yeah, so I've also been saying that the Racer sounds too boy racer.
No.
But the whole idea behind the Ultras Racer is
it's good.
Fabulous.
It's terrific. But I still feel many a time you need to what you call see what are your core strengths, and you have a small, like how you have got so many other car makers who have got a separate off-site studio and a team to start up their best-selling cars. You don't need to do them by the thousands, but you do them in small batches of 500 per year. Those things add to the aura of that individual brand amongst in the portfolio.
Adil, final, before we wrap this up, what is your outlook for Tata Motors?
Very positive. Provided that, again, like I said, don't put all your eggs in the electric basket. Don't overcook it.
Adil, won't you get excited by a Harrier electric with all-wheel drive? Come on.
No.
Nah, come on, Adil.
No. I'd like to have a Harrier with a rear-wheel drive, good petrol engine. The Harrier is terrific. It's made for that. But like I said, yes, I may be what you call, this is a personal preference. But yes, give a car which will what you call make anyone come out smiling. Get in, look at it, he's fixated, yeah, this is the car. He has to get in, and after the drive, he says, yes, this is it. That smile should say it all. Even if he doesn't have money in his pocket, that smile should say it.
And you dream, right?
Yeah.
That when I get money in my pocket, I want to buy that.
Exactly. So once you have hooked that man for good, and it rubs off so well. It rubs off well. One area where Tata Motors really has its work cut out, and I've stressed this many times over, what all it has done within its ambit, production engineering, fit and finish, performance, styling, design, approach, communication, the advertising side of things. Sadly, they need to whip their dealers because that thing is still not up to scratch. All the advances they've done there and they've kept the dealership still here, it's not on. These have to come and match those things.
So still work to do, but where Tata Motors is and the outlook for the future is extremely positive.
I as an Indian am thrilled to bits with what they have done. Trust me, a company which can hold its own, just think about it. It's not just Jaguar-Land Rover which Tata Motors liberated from Ford and helped Ford. They also helped Ford by taking over the Swanand plant.
The Sanand plant.
Yeah, so and all the thing again, you have to understand one thing: a company which bides its time, its approach and everything, there has got to be something working for it.
Yeah.
It just can't be luck alone.
True, Adil, true. This has been fabulous. I've enjoyed listening to all that you've said. If you like...
I hope Tata Motors also enjoy what we said. Sometimes we have been rather critical and harsh, but that is because we love Tata Motors, you know.
Yeah, so if you enjoyed this podcast, this extremely long, but I think this is incredible. This is like reading your book, but listening to everything that is there in the book. So if you enjoy this, let us know in the comments, and then we will do more of this. I think the next we should do on, say, Bajaj Auto.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? We'll do cars, bikes.
Yes.
There's so much to talk about.
True.
We should do one on Ford in India. We should do one on Mahindra. There is just so much to talk
Fiat,
about.
let's not forget Fiat.
Let's not forget Fiat. So there's just so much to talk about, and I personally have really enjoyed this podcast. Just enjoyed listening to you, Adil. I hope our viewers and listeners also enjoyed. If you do enjoy it, let us know in the comments. Tell us the stories that you would like to hear about which manufacturer and
Any particular model per se you want to...
Even a model. So this is gone but not forgotten, taken into the podcast room and really dived into the nuts and bolts. So Adil, thank you very much. Thank you guys
Wonderful.
for watching, and yeah, let us know what you want to listen to about next.